Then Ataturk said, then he took his army and recaptured Constantinople. The British Marines weren't enough to have stopped him. So he just took it over with them standing there. And then he said, I want northern Iraq. I want Mosul, the province of Mosul. He knew there was oil there. The French didn't know there was oil in their mandate for Kurdistan. And so the British gave them northern Palestine, a piece of northern Palestine here, and gave them the Cameroon in Africa. And the French withdrew from that. So in 1923, they wrote a new treaty, Treaty of Lausanne. Lausanne is here in Switzerland on the Italian border. At this place, they wrote the Treaty of Lausanne, 1923, in which they completely obliterated Kurdistan. Kurdistan now, the Kurds are now 35 million people and no country. And there will be no peace in the Middle East till there's a Kurdistan. And I'm a very strong Arab supporter, so I say that despite it. So there are about 20 million Kurds in Turkey, at least 5 million in Istanbul. Now, about half of the Kurds in Turkey have become Turks. They speak Turkish to their children and so forth. These are the borders of the Treaty of Lausanne. And so this area here was supposed to have gone to Kurdistan. And now the British got it, and they made Iraq. It's Ir-Rock, not Iraq. Ir-Rock. And Iran. Everyone, Ir-Rock. Iran, despite what our president might say. When I spoke to the Tennessee National Guard, that was the first thing I taught them. Ir-Rock. It was appreciated they could pronounce it correctly when they got there. It is here just south of Kirkuk, and this is Tikrit. So if you drive a line from Tikrit over to here and up to Kirkuk, that's where the Tennessee National Guard were. At Tuz Kharmata, which means salt mine in Turkish, and it was a salt mine. But it was a former air base in Iraq, and the Tennessee National Guard of East Tennessee, not Knoxville, Chattanooga, or Nashville, but our 1st District Tennessee National Guard are the only unit that I've ever heard of that recruited, trained, and left in their place Iraqis. And part of the reason they did it is because they arrived there with respect for the Iraqis. I told them, look here, we're East Tennessee hillbillies. We have feuds because somebody insulted Great Aunt Susie 100 years ago. And so we at East Tennessee care more about respect than we do about life. We'll fight over if somebody insults us or insults our sister, whatever. And so when you get there, remember that the Iraqis are just like you. They care about respect more than life. And when I arrived there to be a journalist with them, I was the first Arab American that they had met that spoke Arabic, so they all asked me questions. And the first thing they said to me, who are these people? We've had 4 units here in Tuz, and these are the first ones that treated us like human beings. So that goes a long way to explain why they were so successful. Their average age was 42, not 22. And they'd all known each other at least 10 years. They worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm a Quaker and a pacifist, but they are among the finest people I've ever worked with in my life. And they did a superb job. And if they have to go back again to Iraq, I'll go with them. I'm not going to Afghanistan. I don't speak Farsi, and I don't speak any of the Turkish language. So at any rate, that was Iraq. Now, I think it's now time for questions. I've jumped all over the place, but I think I've given you a few of the basic things that most Americans don't know about respect, about the milli, about the individual identity versus group identity, and a little bit of the history of why a religious community is so important. Questions, please. Yes?
Could you go back to the fundamental difference between the Sunnis and the Shiites?
All right. The fundamental difference, the beginning difference, was Shiite Ali, the party of Ali, wanted to have they wanted the succession of the leadership to go on to Ali and Ali's sons and so forth. They were murdered. And so, but the Sunni wanted to decide each time to get together a shura, a leader of leadership, and make a decision, choose. So they could choose someone viable. Yeah.
Sunni bloodline, the Shiite elect.
No, Shia bloodline. Shia bloodline, Sunni elected. But then the Shias are largely in Iran. There's more superstition. The mullah there is like a Southern Baptist preacher. He's everything, and they give him buy him a Cadillac and blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. But the mullah is a Persian word. It's not an Arabic word. And we don't have mullahs in the Arab world. And we don't have paid preachers in the Arab Muslim world. And that makes a big difference. But the differences have grown. They tend to revere the tombs of saints and things like that. The Sunni don't. Now, when I got to Iraq, we went to a large village to distribute school materials. And when we got to the village, they told me this is a Sunni village. And when we got to the village, there were pictures of Hussein and Ali. I said, this is not Sunni, this is Shia. No Sunni would put a picture of anybody up. And they said, no, here it is in the Iraqi intelligence and in the American intelligence. And I read in Bremer's book that the Turkoman, these were Turkoman, the Turkoman was Sunni. He was absolute dictator of Iraq for a year, and he thought that all Turkoman were Sunni. They're all Shia. So when we got into the school, I asked the principal of the school. He said, you know why? Under Saddam, we all pretended to be Sunni. It was safer. It was a little healthier to be Sunni. So that's how they got that. But this is the kind of thing, I believe if we had had more people who understood the culture and the language of Iraq, we'd have had less than half the casualties we've had. We had 12 people in the army who could speak Arabic. Only 2 of them were Americans, not hyphenated Americans. 10 of them were hyphenated Americans. And we did all of our translating through Kurds, most of whose English was about 3rd grade. But I did most of my interpreting in Tuz between East Tennessee and English. English and English. They couldn't understand. Yes, sir.
The revival that you experienced, was that across all demographic groups?
All demographic groups. You must realize the Kurds are not they're not fanatically religious. The Kurds take it kind of casually. You can go into a Kurdish town on Friday and the businesses won't all be closed during the time of prayer on Friday. If you go to Gaza on Friday and you're on the street on Friday, you'll get beat up for not being in the mosque. So it's very different. But it's across all the lines. The Wahhabis, Islam is essentially a religion of practice. You do these certain things and you're a good Muslim. To be a good Christian, you've got to love the Lord God with all thy heart, with all thy faith, and love thy neighbor, and even love yourself. That's the hardest. And none of us ever get there. But you can be a complete Muslim. So it's practice that counts. And when I went there, about 5% of Muslims prayed 5 times a day in Palestine and Syria and Jordan when I went there. Today, it's anywhere from 10 to 15 times that many. That's a real revival. And a lot of it is because most of the people's ancestors had toadied to the French or the British to survive. And now their children are ashamed of that. And they want to show pride in being Muslims. And Islam is a great religion and some wonderful people. The people of Iraq, of Gaza have survived the most terrible tortures and problems and hunger. And right now they don't have enough water and the sewage is terrible, everything. And they've survived because of their faith and their strength of their families. And if Kingsport had been under that kind of oppression, we'd all be crazy in the mental hospital or dead or murderers. But they've survived. So Islam has a great deal to promise. There are some nuts in Islam, and they're wild and they're outspoken. But we've got a few in this country too. We've always had some in Christianity. So we need to keep in mind that Islam is not a danger. That certain individual Muslims are, but so are certain individual Christians. But Islam has a great deal to offer, and it's a religion that has given us a great deal in the world.